This video is about graphing polynomial functions in factored form. We're going to just go ahead and jump right in, and we're going to figure out how to graph this function. F of x equals the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 2 times the quantity x minus 4. Right? And we're going to do quite a bit of steps with this. So it's really important that you keep yourself organized. Okay? All right, and actually I'm going to have you start. I'm going to ask you to find the zeros of the function. Right? So go ahead and do that. Start by finding the zeros of this function. Pause and do that. All right, welcome back. You should have found your zeros, right? So you should have set the function equal to 0. And then using zero product property, right, we would set x minus 1 equal to 0, x plus 2 equal to 0, x minus 4 equal to 0. Sorry, that's a little messy there. Okay, but you should end up with the following zeros. X equals 1, x equals negative 2, and x equals positive 4. All right, so we've got 3 zeros. Now, what's the point of that? Why did we do that? All right, well, because the zeros tell us something about the x-intercepts. Right? This tells us that the x-intercepts would be 1, 0, negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. So right away, we know something about our graph. We know that it has to go through the point 1, 0. We know that it has to go through the point negative 2, 0. And it has to go through the point 1, 2, 3, 4, comma 0. Right? We already know our x-intercepts. All right? I'm going to go ahead and use a table over here to keep ourselves organized. Right? And this table needs to be bigger. All right, but right away, we know that we have these input and outputs. 1, 0, negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. Right? And we're going to find some other values, other points, and complete our graph. Okay? And first, I want you to kind of look at what we've done so far over here. Right? We've found 3 intercepts. Right? So we know the graph is going to go through here, here, and here. But what we don't know is what happens in the other places. And we could kind of divide this up into 4 different intervals. Right? We kind of have this area to the left. We've got this area here, we've got this area here, and then we've got this area over to the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of find out one value in here, or 1 point in here, 1 point here, 1 point here, and 1 point here, and that will be enough to kind of give us a general picture for what this graph looks like. All right. What I would recommend is always, the next thing you should do after finding your x-intercepts, let's find the y-intercepts. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's find our y-intercept. Right? How do we find a y-intercept? Right? Well, if you remember, y-intercept will always have an x value of 0. So basically, we're asking, what is f of 0? All right, so let's plug in 0 to our function. 0 minus 1 times 0 plus 2 times 0 minus 4. Right? And you'll find that f of 0 will be negative 1 times 2 times negative 4. And so f of 0 comes out to be positive 8. Right? So we found another point for our table. We know that it's going to go through the point 0, 8, which is about here. Okay, our graph is going to be a little bit rough, but it's just going to be good enough so that we have a general picture for what it looks like. All right, so we've found that. Now we kind of need to figure out, we found a point here. We need to find a point to the left, here, and then to the right. All right, let's find one, how about to the left? All right, so we need to plug in an x value that would be over here. Right? So we have negative 1, negative 2. The next one would be negative 3. So why don't we try negative 3? All right, so let's do that. How about down here? X equals negative 3. So let's find out what f of negative 3 would be. All right, so let's plug in negative 3. So that'd be negative 3 minus 1 times negative 3 plus 2 times negative 3 minus 4. So this is going to be negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 7. And so f of negative 3 comes out to be, that should be negative 28. Right? So we know another point. We know that when x is negative 3, the output is negative 28. All right, now you're probably thinking, that's going to go way off our graph. Right? That's okay. Right? -3, -28, I'm not going to really even find that exactly, but it's going to be somewhere way down here. Okay? All right, let's keep on going. So we found a point to the left. We found a point here. Now we need to find 2 more points, in here and then to the right. Okay, and I'm going to have you do some of this. All right, so we need a little bit more space here. All right, I'd like you to pause and find a point in here, right? And let's see, let's probably do the same point. We've got an x value of 1, x value of 2. Let's use 2. Let's figure out what happens when x is equal to 2. Go ahead and figure out what f of 2 is. Please pause and do that. All right, here's what you should have. You should have 2 minus 1 times 2 plus 2 times 2 minus 4, which is 1 times 4 times -2. So f of 2 should be -8. Okay, so if we go back to our table, we found another point, 2, -8. Right? And so 2, -8, where's that? 2, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So somewhere about here. Okay. All right, so we found a point in the left, we found a point here, we found a point here. We need to find one more point to the right. All right, go ahead and do that, please. I need more space. All right, what value should we test? All right, we tested 1 and we tested 2. We need to test something that's to the right of 4. So how about 5? Go ahead and test x equal 5. So to find out what f of 5 is equal to. All right, you should have done 5 minus 1 times 5 plus 2 times 5 minus 4, right? And I'm not going to show all the steps here, but you should get, for f of 5, 28. So this is the point 5, 28. Okay, so if I go back to my graph, 528, that's going to be somewhere way out here. Okay, this is obviously not too precise, but that's good enough. Okay, so that gives us a general picture for what our graph looks like. Right? Remember, it's got to go through the intercepts, and it's got to go through these points. Right? So let's kind of do it piece by piece. Well, this part is easy. Right? It's going to start here and can go up. Right? And then here, it's got to go through this point. But then it's got to go back up to hit that intercept. Right? Then it has to go up to hit this point. But then it's got to come back down, and then it's got to hit this point down here. Okay, that's a little bit rough, but you have the general picture. Okay, it's a little hard for me to draw this on my iPad, but please try to make that a little bit smoother than what I just did. All right, we're going to do one other one. All right, so please, I'm going to try to have you do as much of this on your own as possible. All right, we have this function, g of x is equal to -2 times x plus 1 times x minus 2 squared. All right, so first of all, I just want to remind you, this is the same thing as saying -2 times x plus 1 times x minus 2 times x minus 2. All right, so I'm going to have you start and find the zeros of the function. All right, go ahead and do that, please. Find the zeros of the function. All right, and what you should have for the zeros, you should have set it equal to 0. Right? And then I'm going to skip some steps here, but you should get x equals -1 and x equals +2. So we know we have the two zeros, -1, or the intercepts then, -1, 0, and 2, 0. Okay, so let's put that in our table. We know it's going to go through -1, 0, and 2, 0. Where is that in our graph? -1, 0 is here, 2, 0 is here. All right, so this time we only have two intercepts, or two x-intercepts. All right, let's go ahead and find the y-intercept. Okay, so for the y-intercept, let's set the x equal to 0. All right, go ahead and do that. Find g of 0. Pause and please do that. All right, welcome back. You should have done this. -2 times 0 plus 1 times 0 minus 2 times 0 minus 2. And when you do that, you should get negative 2 times 1 times negative 2 times negative 2. And so g of 0 comes out to be negative 8. So we've got the point 0, negative 8. Where's that? 0, negative 8 down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Somewhere about here. Okay, remember, this is just kind of a rough picture. All right, so we've got our two x-intercepts and we've got a y-intercept. Right? What do we need to finish this graph? We need to figure out what's happening over here and what's happening over here. All right, so we just need 2 more points. Okay, and I'm going to have you do that. So let's pick a value for the left. Right? We already used negative 1, so let's pick a point to the left of that. How about negative 2? So I'd like you to figure out what happens when we plug in negative 2. In other words, figure out what g of negative 2 is. Also, I'd like you to figure out what happens over here. Right? We already figured out what happens when we have x equals 2, but let's use 1 over here. How about x equals 3? Right? So go ahead and do that. Please pause and figure out g of negative 2 and g of 3. All right, let's see what you got. All right, so g of negative 2. You should have negative 2 times negative 2 plus 1 times negative 2. I'm going to run out of room, aren't I? Let's try this again. All right, let's do that maybe a little bit lower. Okay, let me start this over. Okay, so let's do g of negative 2 down here. So g of negative 2 is going to be negative 2 times negative 2 plus 1 times negative 2 minus 2 times negative 2 minus 2. All right, I'm not going to show all the work there, but when you multiply that out, you should get positive 16. So we know we have the point negative 2, 16. All right, and then lastly, you should have plugged in 3. Right? So that would be negative 2 times 3 minus 2 times 3 minus 2 times 3 plus 1. Or you might have done that in a different order. Right? But when you multiply that all out, you should get g of 3 is equal to negative 8. Right? So in our table, we have the point 3, negative 8. Okay, and I apologize this is so messy, but it's a little bit hard to write all this on the iPad. It'll be easier when we do this on paper in class. All right, so we're ready to graph our polynomial. Let's zoom in here. All right, we already have our intercepts, right? Negative 1, 0, and 2, 0, and also the y-intercept 0, negative 8. But then we also know it goes through the point 3, negative 8 down here. And then we have one other point, negative 2, negative 16. Or negative 2, sorry, positive 16, way up here. Right? It's somewhere up here. Okay, so what does that mean for our graph? That means our graph's going to look like this. Okay, so I hit all the intercepts, right? And then it has to go down here to hit this point. It has to go down here to hit the y-intercept. I know I kind of missed that. It has to go back up and go back up. All right, we'll graph more of these in class.